Some viewer actually complained about me sipping my coffee that way. So to that demographic, I apologize. There's this bizarre phenomenon on YouTube where there's a cherry pie demographic. And what I mean is that I can make a statement as benign and uncontroversial as, I like apple pie. And then, invariably, the cherry pie demographic will just crucify me for it. There are advocacy groups for things that you wouldn't even believe, so of course there's an anti-coffee sipping, slurping demographic. It's just next to impossible to keep from offending somebody on the internet, or everybody on the internet. So, in that spirit of thinking, I should probably just, to use the old cliche, be myself. Well, anyways, should you want the genuine experience, what you're looking at right here is about as close as what it ever feels like to be me. This is what I spend most of my time staring at, a small pile of books upstairs, this ratty carpet, and the games that are behind it. I really don't have any interest in telling people who I was or what I've done in my life. I get a lot of questions about what was your trade, what was your educational background, what, how do you become the weird thing that you are? And I really have no interest in discussing that. If you would respect my will to maintain my privacy in that respect, I would appreciate it. But I will talk about what I am now and what I do and what I'm interested in at this point. And I'm unquestionably a compulsive reader. And I have a massive collection of video games that borders on excessive. I suppose you shouldn't have games that you don't play, and I try to keep that as a rule. If I'm not interested in playing it, then I really don't have interest in owning it. I don't want to just keep the games up on the shelf in like a display. I kind of don't like that. As somewhat of a pragmatist, I suppose, I don't really like that school of thought. Although I do have a sealed copy of GoldenEye. Here, I'll show you. Hold on. Cut. Now, of course, this has zero pragmatic value. This is totally for my own bizarre satisfaction. I really want to make a case for this. It will be an upcoming video at some point. I'll maybe build a wooden box and then line it with a foam case and some kind of soft material like this. This is flawless. Yeah, it's that old. Why this game? Because it was important to me. It was a lot of fun. We used to play this when I was younger. And I devoted a considerable portion of my time to it. So maybe I'll branch off someday and discuss video game related stuff just because it's one of my interests, and in my real life I have nobody to talk to about it because nobody cares. But there is a massive online community of people who are interested in such things, and weirdos like me that have several thousand games, not counting emulators or PC. There is a wide community to discuss such things with. Oddly enough, I don't really see literary discussion online. I have seen a few channels where people do book discussions and such, but I think for the most part it bores people. But as of late, my reading tends towards the philosophical. The book that I want to read right now, I just ordered it on eBay. It's called Superintelligence. Nick Bostrom, I think. Very interesting. deals with this relatively new philosophical problem called the control problem, which is when a brain that is sufficiently developed, an artificial brain, is sufficiently developed so as to become what is called strong AI, or strong generalized intelligence that rivals that of a human being. Once we produce that in I don't want to use the term artificial. I don't even like that term, to be honest, because artificial implies that it's not real, and that's kind of misleading. The whole point of intelligence is that it doesn't matter where it arises, it's intelligence. Quite an interesting problem, but that's new, and I'm not very well read on it at this point. But a lot of these books are books that I've been either reading for a long time, or, well, some of them don't belong. This doesn't belong. I just dabble with this. I just dabble with this one as well. Some of them I return to a lot. I read probably a dozen or so books at a time usually, and it oftentimes takes me sometimes several years to read a book all the way through. I mean, my goodness, how long I've been reading on The Origin of Species, I can't even say. Sometimes I skip to the punchline or read what other people write about it, or read the Wikipedia article, read the Cliff's Notes versions of important pieces of writing, because you can't, obviously you have to get to the punchline with On the Origin of Species, because it was such a profoundly influential book. It's shaped the last, how many years has it been? 150 years? I can't even remember. 1859? Yeah, 1859. That's a long time. It's influenced a lot of thought. You would think that that idea would have settled in by now. I guess we're just slow to adopt reality when it's strange and doesn't seem to fit with our intuitions. And that is a strange idea. But what else? Oh, I especially enjoy Emerson, especially as I become older. I think I appreciate the poetic quality that it has to its reading. Carl Sagan, oh my goodness, he's wonderful. I never read Cosmos. I have it, but I read the first chapter and I thought, what's the point? You can just watch the program and it's verbatim exactly what the book is. So there's really, I would rather watch the program, to be honest. But in defense of Carl Sagan's writing, my goodness, he's just a brilliant author. He also has somewhat of a poetic quality, not quite as flowery as Emerson's writing, but it's certainly not this sort of dry academic or sterile sort of scientific writing that usually comes bundled with such types of science-related writing. There are some authors that have a gift for putting it into the generalized vernacular, and I think Carl Sagan is probably one of the most shining examples of that. But there are quite a few. Steven Pinker is pretty good. He's a little bit dry, but I like it. Sam Harris is probably, all things considered, probably my favorite contemporary author, and probably the person with whom I identify with more than any other human being I've ever read about, save for Thoreau, but he's not alive, so he doesn't count. I'm going to check the camera. I'm rambling. Wow, 6 minutes. Who knows how long I can go? Maybe I ought to write a book. I have. Actually, I'm on page 50-something of a book. It's pretty heavy content. It definitely deals with some of the pretty hefty philosophical concepts. I've been stuck on this for a long time, and I'm going to keep the file size small. I'm closing. Cut. John Stuart Mill. It's pretty dry, but wow, he's brilliant. His idea on liberty, I suppose, that's what it's called, on liberty, is this it's a really simple idea. It's kind of the bedrock upon which classical liberalism is founded, and I can totally identify with it. More on liberalism in a moment, but before all of you conservative viewers say, I can't listen to this anymore. The idea of classical liberalism is that freedom should be extended to its furthest possible degree. Personal liberty, or the ability to do whatever you want, should be extended to its furthest possible degree, insofar as that it doesn't extend to the point where it inhibits the freedoms of others. So in other words, you should be able to do whatever you want to do as long as it's not screwing up the ability of other people to do what they want to do. And seems... Oh, one other caveat. You have to add in also that one of the limitations of this is that it has to take in safety. It has to account for the fact that people can come to harm through inaction or action. So it's a little more complicated than how I made it sound. But man, and it is a little dry and stuffy reading, but my goodness, he's such a nice guy. He's so polite. Like when you read his writing, you think of, oh, what a kind person. He's so thoughtful. And I know that liberalism, or modern liberalism, has kind of too much of a soft, cushy stigma attached to it. And what makes me not a modern liberal is that modern liberalism has become let's face it, relativism. Modern liberals are relativists. They think that all opinions are equally valid, and all ideologies are equally valuable, and that nobody can make an empirical claim that one position is better than another. And this is an absurdity. This is where I part ways with liberalism, and it hurts me because classical liberalism has so much value to it, and people that reject liberalism as a school of thought outright because of what they hear Bill O'Reilly say, or Ann Coulter, or any of these way too extreme right-wing political personalities, especially in the United States. We've gone far to the right at the expense of brilliant minds like this. Many people on the far right would just outright reject anything by Miller. And that hurts me because there is so much legitimate theory and schools, and so many great schools of thought contained within, but say la vie. So why I mention any of this is because I'm hot off the heels of Thanksgiving dinner at my family's Thanksgiving dinner, and I live in a region of just shy of Appalachia where it's pretty far on the right side of the political spectrum here, and my family especially, they're very conservative, very conservative. So to my European viewers, you guys would probably consider my family extreme, to the point of absurdity. Now, I will take into account that having been immersed in and raised in such an environment has probably affected me and made me more empathetic to the political right than I ought be, but I do my best, and I've been a science person my whole life. I do my best to evaluate and scrutinize these ideas as empirically as I possibly can, and I do find value with a lot of the thinking on the right. And I know this reading right here, this small collection, seems as though I'm pretty left-leaning. And I think that's fair if you consider what I said earlier about classical liberalism. I don't want to think of myself as a modern liberal. Those people have grown out of touch. And oh my, the cherry pie demographic's going to become so upset if I post this video. But I can't dance around it forever. There's no point in insulating myself from my or insulating my audience from my actual positions. It's just not fair to do it. It's disingenuous, and it's just not the case. I have real positions on things. I'm not neutral. There's this tendency towards neutrality with YouTube people where, well, first of all, there are opinion people. You have your commentators who just completely tumble down the rabbit hole and do not preserve any mystery or neutrality whatsoever. And they quickly throw their red meat to their following and they have a tendency to become increasingly extreme. And I really don't want to do that. But then you have the other side of that coin, which is the demographic who adheres to the idea of the success algorithm. And what I mean by the success algorithm is that you can be neutral and not offend anybody and not make claims like, I like apple pie. And if you don't make claims like that, you will preserve your neutrality long enough to gain a lot of support. And people will fill in the blanks that they don't know about your personality with the bits and pieces of their own. What you leave blank, they will just assume that if you are shallow a character enough, they will assume that you're just like they are. PewDiePie is a master of this. He just kind of gives this sarcastic look at the camera and smiles, and everybody thinks, I identify with this, he identifies with me, we think alike. This is absurd to us. Now, the absurdity that the undifferentiated, nondescript absurdity that PewDiePie is smiling at is, it could be anything. It hasn't been defined. So it's really easy to identify with a character like that. As soon as you start making claims about the things you like and dislike, you're going to piss people off. It's just the nature of the beast. So the success algorithm works where it's just easier to gain support and achieve success by being neutral. This is why all politicians are so neutral. It's why the most popular YouTube channels don't make outrageous claims. And it's also why they don't become crucified for their beliefs or opinions or commenting. Oh my goodness, the people hate that I comment. People despise that I comment. I get so many comments every day about how just ignore them, just ignore them, just ignore them. Yeah. Well, it's not so easy to ignore them, and it is rational to ignore them if your goal is not to affect change, but rather to promote yourself. Then yes, it would be in your best interest to not ever reply to comments. There is another point that I would like to make, and that is that viewers prefer a buffoon. There's no question about it. They want to see a person that messes up because it makes viewers feel as though they are superior to the person that they're watching. If you show off your skills or make viewers feel threatened, or assert yourself and say, you know what, I don't have to act like a buffoon, I'm a smart guy, then you are going to be labeled as arrogant, and they're going to despise you. And I think that, in large measure, is exactly what my problem is here on YouTube. They really think, people really believe that I'm arrogant, and I would much prefer to think of it as asserting myself. I don't want to think that I'm arrogant, but I am smart. I own it. I'm a smart guy. I worked hard to become smart, and it's not fair that I should have to play the part of the fool so that I don't bother somebody or threaten somebody. You can be smart too. There's no reason why you can't. You just have to work hard at it. And I don't want to have to be forced into this marginalized position where I have to always pretend like I'm dumb. I don't want to be the buffoon. I would just want to be myself. And YouTube makes it very hard to do that. People are very critical of me whenever I say anything that is outside the expected parameters of my role as a person who makes puzzle cubes. My mom used to say, there's a difference between education and intelligence. And I agree with her. I've definitely grown to agree. I have come to agree with that assessment. I'm mostly a genetic determinist now. And so, as I stated, I'm not liberal insofar as I don't think that all people are equal. And I'm not a relativist. There is a distinct difference between intelligence and education. Now, when I say that, and I'm sorry to be arrogant, but when I say that I'm smart, I mean that I'm some combination of those. Now, if I was intelligent, then I got lucky. I won the genetic lottery to become intelligent. But none of that matters without education. You have to educate yourself in order to use or benefit from any intelligence that you might have. And by the same token, a person could have virtually zero intelligence and still educate themselves to become smart. So let's just use smart as a nondescript adjective to describe what we mean by the conventional notion of some combination of intelligence and education. Well, you don't develop intelligence, and I think that's what my mom means. You're going to be born with that, and you're going to have some inherent limitations just genetically. And for that reason, you will never be able to exceed the limitations imposed upon you by your biology. And that sucks, but that's because life isn't fair. But education is a powerful tool, and it can temper what little education we have, what little intelligence we have into something incredibly powerful, which enables us to overcome any constraints that we have, any impediments that stand to keep us from becoming smart. So that's exactly why I say I'm not arrogant when I tell you that, yeah, I'm smart, but but I deserve to be able to say that because I work my tail off to get that way. Oh man, I'm gonna get nailed for this video. You arrogant, pretentious douchebag. I can't be the buffoon for you. I'm sorry. If you despise that, I don't know what to tell you. There's enough people on the internet acting like fools, and I can't do it. I want to talk to you as though you are my equal, and I expect you to work to keep up, because that's exactly what I did. When I was a kid, I used to read Edgar Allan Poe. I had this big book, and I still recommend Poe. I had this big book of Edgar Allan Poe. I didn't understand a word. But I read and read and read, and it took me, well into my late 20s before I could understand Poe. And even to this day, it confuses me. If you want to get to the point where you can read John Stuart Mill and understand him, or Emerson, or Hobbes, or Darwin, or formal logic with Bertrand Russell, you're going to have to work. And you're going to have to become smart to get there. Not everybody's going to be born with the ability to become that smart. But most everybody can, as long as you're willing to educate yourself and work. So start with Emerson's Self-Reliance and The American Scholar and some other things that I could recommend if you're interested to help getting you on your way to becoming an arrogant asshole on the internet. Thanks a lot, guys. Oh, one more thing that I just wanted to get off of my chest. When I attended my Thanksgiving dinner at my family's house, an argument ensued because, as I said, they're all extremely politically conservative, and they view me as an extremist leftist, which is simply not the case. That's not even remotely true. But one of the things that I noticed while I was there, probably because none of them read Bertrand Russell or any of the formal logic that I espouse, even though I don't always hold completely fast to it. The idea of logic is that you make a claim, A, therefore D, and it sounds, at face value, absurd. And your most visceral response to this claim, A, therefore D, is, no, it can't be. My intuition tells me otherwise. And many things in real life are counterintuitive, and science has continuously demonstrated this to us again and again and again. And claims such as A, therefore D, just look absurd. But logic can work in a way, and I'm not going to use any fancy formal logic terms, but if you can buy the premise B and buy premise C, then you can get to D. And then it doesn't seem so absurd, because if each of these works, I would have to probably think about it real hard to outline a good metaphor to explain, but I think just in Thanksgiving dinner situations, when you make this claim and then you start to explain, but as far as you get is halfway through B and they won't listen to C, then they're just going to reject you as a lefty extremist. I don't think I have anything else to say for now. I hope that I haven't offended any of you by just rambling. This was really just getting random things off of my chest, and I'm kind of interested as to what the response will be. Maybe I should not drink coffee and ramble into the camera, right? I hope you guys have a great day. Thanks for watching this.